Hello, everyone. This is the Catholic Esquire. Many of you heard the other day I am launching a new project. It's going to be a new audio only podcast called Vatican II The Real History. It's going to be available on all your popular podcasting outlets, and I'll also be publishing it here on this YouTube channel. I wanted to take the opportunity today to put a little more meat on the bone there for you and explain to you why it's so imperative that we learn and understand what really was happening at the Second Vatican Council and its impact on the rest of the world. You see, my friends, I'm doing this and I'm not doing this for money. This is going to be ad free. There's going to be no premium subscriptions, no paywalls, none of that. It's just going to go out into the ether and hopefully someone will listen to it. And the reason I want to do this is because it's so important that we understand what the crisis in the church is all about. The crisis in the church is important to understand because it helps us explain a lot of the things we see out there in the world today. And it also has significant effect on the salvation of souls. Literally, eternal souls are at stake. And they're at stake because of the health of the church. Christ didn't institute a church for fun, just as something to do, for entertainment, for amusement, to give people an opportunity to just create magazines to talk about the faith however they want to talk about it, or destroy it however they want to destroy it. Like the Jesuits, I did a video on that the other day. This isn't a joke. People's lives, people's souls are at stake here. You know, you look around the world right now, nobody, 95%, 99% of the people out there know virtually nothing about what the Christian faith teaches. This is completely the opposite of the situation in the church 100 years ago, and especially even 500 years ago before the Protestant Revolt. So whether we're talking about the Protestant Revolt, whether we're talking about the modernist heresies, whether we're talking about the revolution in the church that happened at the Second Vatican Council, these were all attacks on and rejections of and rebellion against our Lord Jesus Christ, his kingship in the world, and his authority over the church, which demands and requires and always will, because the church doesn't defect. The church doesn't defect. Individuals in the church defect. I know, hard concept for some folks. The church itself doesn't defect and always teaches pure truth doctrine for the salvation of souls. And if you live by these truths, if you live by what the church has always taught, if you exercise the virtues that St. Thomas Aquinas taught about, you can also lead a very fruitful life here on this world before the next. Even if there's hardships, you're never going to get rid of the hardships. But that teaching, that Catholicism helps you understand and deal with the hardships and the crosses you're going to face. And that's something the world outside of our little Catholic social media bubble here doesn't understand. That's why they turn to drugs, sex, and alcohol to make up for that lack of faith in their lives, to make up for that lack of connection to our Lord Jesus Christ in our lives. This is the role of what the church should be doing right now. If we had a normal, functioning, healthy church, they would be at the vanguard. We would have popes, cardinals, bishops at the vanguard of the culture war, fighting against the insanity and the chaos we see today. In fact, I would say that we wouldn't see the insanity and chaos to the level it is today. When we had good, faithful, holy priests, bishops, and popes, yes, there were still heresies. They were battling them all the time, obviously. But the rest of the culture was still Christian culture. It wasn't constantly working against the individual to lead them to hell, because the church had previously established those foundations that permeated the culture. And even down to this day, there's some little aspects of it left that you can see and cling on to out in that secular world because it was such a powerful thing. But see, this all requires cooperation with us as sinful human beings. And when there isn't cooperation, then things will start to fall apart. Then the devil does get the upper hand. And that's what we're seeing right now. I know many of you struggle. You have family members who have fallen away from the faith. Many of them have been led away by the faith or saw no reason to stay in the faith because of faithless, gutless people who claim to be Catholics, hold themselves out of Catholics, charge people massive amounts of money to become not Catholic. They're victims of that. But that's part of the rejection of our Lord Jesus Christ and his kingship. You look in the world today, the government, completely separated. We completely in the United States bought into this notion of separation of church and state. Why? Because they didn't want the church's teachings. They didn't want to abide by the church's teachings in our social and civil life because they don't like them. They want to not follow those teachings. They want to follow their own passions. And so they had to find a way to separate the church from the state. And that's what they did. And that's why you have a government that completely is godless. But again, that's a rejection of our Lord Jesus Christ, his kingship in the church. And then there's the people within the church themselves who know not the faith. And now since the Second Vatican Council are learning something totally different that has not been part of the traditional Catholic faith, but they're told it's Catholic. And every single year that goes by since the Second Vatican Council, if other people don't stand up and speak the truth, those lies, errors, and heresies will filter into the church just as those lies, errors, and heresies filtered into the rest of society. And so we cannot allow that to happen. We have to state the truth and we have to say, no, Vatican II was a revolution in the church. It was a rejection of God, and it was putting man on a pedestal equal to or above God. It was just like all the rest of it, a rejection of the kingship of Christ. Which is why one of the reasons why they even rejected the original Feast of the Kingship of Christ. I've done videos on that because it's all out there. And so it's important to even though it's been 60 years, it's sort of still the bud because we can still nip that. We can still say it's only been a couple generations now since the Second Vatican Council. We can say, no, this isn't right. What happened at that council is wrong. The teachings at that council are not Catholic. But if people don't understand what that council was all about, who were the players, what were the shenanigans and intrigues going on to trick the good bishops into thinking it was something that was acceptable or okay, what was happening there? We have to understand that. So for future generations, we can reclaim the church. And by reclaiming the church as it always was for centuries upon centuries, even with the defects of the people who were part of the church, if we can reclaim that heritage and proudly announce it once again as triumph in this world, you're going to see the rest of the world change. You're going to see family members coming back to the faith. You're going to see government officials more and more start praying, start giving honor to the Blessed Virgin Mary. You're going to see that more and more happening. But until we get it right in the church, that's almost impossible. Because it's the church that these people, our family and our politicians and our culture and our sports figures and everybody is going to be looking to for leadership and guidance. And that can happen again, but it's not going to happen unless we address the chaos and revolution of the Second Vatican Council. So please continue to turn into this channel. I'm going to start releasing the episodes before the end of this month in January of 2025. Please subscribe to the show on all your favorite podcast channels, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, any of those, the big ones that'll be on there. And please continue to pray for the church. Pray for those who have fallen away from the church, who saw what has happened into the church and didn't make sense to them and felt that they had to leave the church because of it. Pray for them. Pray for the world. Pray for the politicians, for the restoration of the kingship of Christ in the United States and every country throughout the world. And of course, continue to pray for the restoration of the traditional Latin Mass. Thank you for listening, and God bless.